My name is Shasta Garcia, and I'm the host of Shasta's Journey. This show is all about my path to purpose, and along the way, I get to meet so many incredible people with stories that can and will teach, heal, or inspire one of your guys' lives. And a part of this show, I get to meet incredible people with stories, and on this episode, I will be interviewing Janelle Keller, and she is a new person in my life, but has made a tremendous impact so far with my Mexico mission trips. And so I'm so excited for you guys to hear her story on how she got a part of it and just kind of how our lives are intertwined at this point. So you traveled all the way up from San Diego, is that correct?
Yes, South Orange County.
Wow, yeah. Okay. So did you grow up around there, or?
No, I grew up in Western New York in a small farm town. This actually reminds me a lot of that town.
Really? Mm-hmm. That must be nice. So like a small town kind of girl.
Yeah, more cows than people.
Yep, me too. Definitely. I could not live in San Diego. I mean, if it came down to it, I probably could, but it would be a struggle.
I like cities too, but yeah.
Definitely. Well, so you are the executive director of Foundation for His Ministries, and I know you said that sounds really professional, which it totally is. And so how long have you been with that position?
That specific position has been a little over a year now.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. And for those who don't know what Foundation for His Ministry is, how would you explain that?
We are an organization that we're celebrating 50 years this year. And we started in the Baja of Mexico, which is the peninsula of Mexico, with a children's home, and that expanded into outreach ministries to field workers, and then we expanded to Oaxaca, which is southern Mexico, and we have children's home there and outreach into the mountains of Mexico. And now we're hoping to expand into Sinaloa, which is on the other side of the peninsula, and that's an area where there's thousands of migrant workers that come from all over the country to work in the fields. And it's also the heart of the drug cartel. Wow. So there's a lot of violence from that, and a real need for a children's home because of the children that have been impacted by the drug war violence. Mm-hmm. So that's our dream for the future.
Definitely. I know I keep up with all of that. And do you have any fears going into that particular area of Mexico?
You know, I feel like I should, but I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
I've been down several times now, and I just never feel any fear because I feel like this is what God has called me to, and so I just know that He's going to go before me. And I have more fear like going to get my oil changed in California.
Yeah, you can have fear everywhere, but you can't let fear stop you from living your life, that's for sure.
Right.
I know I'm leaving for Mexico for 3 months next week, and everybody always tells me, "You're going to Mexico?" I'm like, it's just as scary anywhere else in this world,
right,
so
right.
I'm just going to go where God calls me. Mm-hmm. That's all you really can do. So how did you find yourself in Mexico and a part of Foundation for His Ministries?
Well, I worked for a church in Chicago. So after Western New York, I went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. And then after that, just stayed and was working at this church. And they were talking about this trip to Baja, to an orphanage. I thought, I want to be a part of that. And so that was in 2000 that I went for the first time. And I was just hooked. I felt like my life was changed. It was the first time I'd really seen poverty. And was just really able to love on the children there, and I just kept going for 7 years, just kept going, and then finally I said, why am I not living in Mexico? And so in 2007, I finally was at a point in my life where I could move, and so I ended up going to our mission in Oaxaca, where I was for 4 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
It really
so
was.
Awesome. I hope to do that one day, definitely. Is there any difference between the Baja and Oaxaca? Because I personally have not been to the Oaxaca Mission yet. I've always gone to Baja, but I would love to check it out. Is there any differences?
They're totally different.
Really?
I have the same values, living simply and living in faith, seeking God. But Oaxaca is, there's 150 different indigenous groups that live in the state of Oaxaca. And so there's a lot of different dialects. It's just people that have deep-rooted history there in Oaxaca. And so even the culture is different. Baja's more transient people who've come from all over the country. It doesn't have as much of its own culture in Baja. And then as far as the missions go, our mission in Baja is like a small town. You know, it has its own fire department, outreach ministries. We have the biggest macadamia nut orchard in continental North America. And yeah, you'd never have to leave the mission, really. But then our one in Oaxaca is about, I think it was started in 99, so I'm testing my math and doing a bad job. Well, but it's not as old
17 years.
As Baja. Yes.
I think I did it right.
It's newer, it's smaller, and our Oaxaca Mission was the last one that was built. So kind of learned from our mistakes in building children's homes before that, and now it's our crown jewel as far as the buildings and just the beauty of the mission in Oaxaca.
I've seen pictures. It is gorgeous.
It really is
absolutely wonderful. And it blows my mind that it all started with a simple vision of an amazing lady. Mm-hmm. It's incredible. Would you like to share that?
Yeah, Chuck and Charla Perot are our founders, and Charla she'll be 84 in July 4th. Oh. And she still is in the office every day, just still working and giving all she has to Foundation for His ministry. But in 1966, they decided to take a road trip down to Baja. She had read about some old ruins in the newspaper and thought this would be a great road trip for Chuck's birthday. But what she didn't realize is once they got south of Ensenada, there was no road. And so it was starting to get dark, and they, in 1966, it wasn't as developed as it is now. Mm-hmm. So it was just potholes, and Charlotte says that no one in the car was speaking to her. It was them and another couple, and they all thought this was just a terrible idea. Chuck was saying they weren't even going to find their bones, and
wow.
So they were out of gas. They were running out of gas. They knew they didn't have enough gas to go back to Ensenada, so they just kept going forward. And then eventually they ended up at this property where a woman gave them a place to sleep for the night. She said that in the morning she would give them gas so that they could go back to L.A. where they were living, where their kids were with the babysitter. And this was before cell phones. Yeah. So the babysitter probably has another version of this story. But in the morning, after a sleepless night on a mattress with 4 adults, Charla got up and was just walking around praying, and she could hear children laughing, but there were no children there. And then she could also see fields of grain, even though there were not fields of grain. She could see it with her eyes. And so she knew this was going to be a place for children to have a safe home. And it was also going to be a place of revival, that the fields of grain signified evangelism and discipleship. And so we've been watching that vision lived out for the last 50 years, that with a safe home for children and evangelism and discipleship happening in the community.
It's an absolutely incredible organization. I feel extremely blessed that I've been able to be a part of it just over the last 3.5 years. I mean, it has made a tremendous impact in my life. And
thank you for serving.
Thank you so much. Just to have the opportunity to do it, though, is absolutely incredible. So you must have a significant story leading up to being where you are now in your life and what you're doing with Foundation for His ministries. And I'd really love to kind of talk about your childhood and how you found God, because that truly brought you to where you are now and kind of molded and shaped you into who you are.
Well, I grew up in a Christian home. I was really blessed and privileged to have godly parents that took us to church. Every time the doors were open, we were at church, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And they also sent us to Christian camps, just any opportunity they had to really show us who Jesus is. And both of my parents are very serving people. Mm-hmm. They modeled how to serve others. They were always involved in the church and just in loving their neighbors well. And so I had that modeled for me growing up. And then when I was 14, I started working at a Christian camp called Circle C Ranch, and it was like a Christian dude ranch kind of. But that is really where I started to have a heart for ministry. That's where I knew, okay, I want to dedicate my life to the kind of things that I'm dedicating my summers to, and just working hard and laying it all out for the kingdom of God. And so that camp was very fundamental in my desire and call in ministry. And then, like I said, I went to Moody Bible Institute, just got a good foundation for that, and then started working at a church and just have been really blessed with the opportunities that I've had in ministry. It's really a privilege to be able to do ministry as a job, because we're all called to ministry, even if we are working in an office or working at a gas station.
Yeah.
It's funny you said gas station because I just said that. But you have to do ministry, and I get the privilege of getting paid to do it. So it's really an honor and a privilege.
It sounds like it. I would do it any day. Call me up. But, as Christians and, during your faith, it's not all easy. And that's something that I really love to point out during the episodes of Shasta's Journey, because we all have hardships and trials and tribulations that we go through to get to where we are now. And, God uses those. So what are some trials and tribulations that you have overcame throughout your walk with God?
That's a good question. I think something that comes to mind, and this is unusually vulnerable for me to talk about this, but I feel like I'm supposed to mention it. I have, ever since I was a little girl, I've wanted to be a mom. I've wanted to be married. If you asked me what I wanted to be when I was a little girl, I said a pastor's wife instead of like a nurse or a doctor. And so now I'm going to turn 40 in January, and I still have not found the one, or I'm still single. And so for a long time, that was something that kept me from fully serving, fully giving with my whole heart, because I thought, well, if I go to Mexico, then I'm not going to meet anyone there. Or so maybe I should get married, and then I can go do what God's calling me to do. So I think it's just realizing that we're always going to have something that we want. I could get married next week, and there would still be something in my life that I felt like, oh, now I want that. Yeah. So, we all always live with want, because we're here on earth and not with God in heaven. And so I think that He uses that want to keep us seeking Him. And so it's been important for me in my position and in my job to continually seek God, even though I have those unmet desires.
Mm-hmm. And what have you learned throughout the process of dealing with that? Because I know, like you were saying, it's human. I mean, we all want things, whether we want a candy bar or whether we want, it doesn't really matter, but it's completely right. So what have you learned to overcome that and, be okay with it and, seek God instead of focusing on the desire of the wanting?
I think one thing is to be okay with saying that you want it. I think as single women, sometimes we don't want to come off as desperate or... So just being able to admit that you do have desires, but that God is still enough. So it's just a constant surrender. It's kind of a balance between being authentic and real with God, but also continuing to ask Him and seek Him in those desires and those wants.
I love the word authentic. It's been one of my favorites, just because you can tell when somebody's being authentic, and there's no reason that we have to be anything but that towards God, because He already knows. It's just you might as well. And
we can't trick God. Sometimes we think, oh, if I think this or I do this, then maybe I'll trick you into this. But He knows what we're thinking, and He knows our desires. So.
Yeah, we were actually talking about at youth group, these youth, we're talking about how they try to impress God by their actions and things like that. It's like, you don't have to impress Him. He loves you. He does. But throughout your life, I can imagine just you've had a really steady ground, which is really incredible to kind of see that, because you don't get that very much.
No, I've really been blessed.
Yeah, definitely. So what other life experiences have you been through that have molded and shaped you into who you are as a woman today?
Well, I think definitely living and serving in Mexico, that was the 4 best years of my life. And being a missionary, like you said, it's not easy, and there's things about it that were really hard. And even now, I love what I'm doing. I feel so privileged and blessed, but I have 4 nieces in Western New York that I don't get to see very often. And so there's always sacrifice involved in ministry and being a missionary.
Definitely.
And so sometimes we think, oh, it'll be this great adventure where I go, and there is an adventure piece to it for sure. And there are really fun things and amazing things, but there's also sacrifice. And living in Oaxaca really showed me that. And you just have to seek God every day. But with the sacrifice, you also get to see God work in amazing ways. I got to see so much life change and miracles living in Mexico and and being on the front lines. And so,
what did you do over the course of 4 years? Because I know working at the orphanage, just over the times that I have, your jobs range from anywhere from plucking weeds to babysitting kids to working in a soup kitchen. Like it really just varies. So what did you end up doing over the course of the 4 years?
When I went down, I was going to work in sponsorship. So each of our kids have sponsors to help pay for the cost of them living in the home. But also the sponsors are really important as far as praying for them, making them feel chosen. They call their sponsors aunt and uncle, TNTO. And so they're just an important part of the kids' lives. And so my job was to find sponsors, translate the letters from the kids to their sponsors and from the sponsors to the kids. It was a pretty easy job, and it was really nice to be doing that. I thought, okay, this is great. I can play with kids, translate a few letters, and I get to live in Mexico. And after I had been doing that for about 3 months, some of the board members came down and met with different people about who was going to be the administrator, who's going to be in charge of that mission. And at that time, I had studied Spanish in high school, but it had been quite a while since high school, and so my Spanish I spoke Spanish like a 3-year-old. And so just keep that in mind as you hear what the board said. So then the last night they were there, they asked to meet with me, and I still remember the room we were in and in the staff housing, and my best friend Jill was there, and they said, we've prayed and talked to different people, and we feel like you're supposed to be the administrator. I thought, that is crazy. I'm very unqualified. I'm going to stand up and lead staff meetings, have conversations with people in my 3-year-old Spanish. And they said, just pray about it. Just try it. And so that's what I did for the next 3.5 years. I led the mission. I got to work with some amazing staff and love some amazing kids. And then last February, the board was meeting in Oaxaca, and in that same building, my best friend was there again. They asked me to be the executive director, and I had the same reaction of, that is not the best idea that you could have come up with. And they said, well, just try it. Just say yes and ask God to empower you. And so I just thought, that's so God to put me in the same place when I feel like I'm taking on this impossible task.
Yeah, I'm hoping he doesn't make me sing. We always get pushed out of our comfort zone, especially when you're in a different culture. Like God just seems to really just completely push you out of your comfort zone. And going into, I'm not going in blindsided, going to Mexico because I've been there so much, but I definitely have not been there as long as I am going there. So I really just want to ask you, as a fellow missionary, what are some challenges that you have to experience and go through, and just how I can prepare myself mentally, spiritually, and physically, because, when people do think of it, and including me, you look at it as like an adventure, it's going to be fun, but there is going to be trials and tribulations and things that I'll have to overcome over those 3 months.
I think the number one most important thing is to seek God every day. Someone sat me down and told me that when I first moved to Oaxaca, and they said the spiritual warfare is even more tangible, like you're really going to experience it. And they said you have to seek God every day or you're not going to make it. So I've always had that in mind, that you got to be in prayer, you got to be reading scripture. And at the missions, they start with devotions every morning for an hour. And sometimes it's easy to think, well, that's going to be my seeking God. I think it has to go beyond that. Like God, you need to seek God as an individual as well as there every morning with the community, so that He is speaking to you and you can add that to the community. The other thing that comes to mind is that you should know that you're going to be lonely sometimes. I think we forget that when we're going on the mission field. We think, oh, there's 100 other staff, and you're out of your culture, you're away from family and friends, and there are times where you feel lonely. You're going to think, what have I done and how many days are left in my months? But that's normal. It's normal, and it's part of the missionary experience, I think. And
there's no way around that, huh?
Yeah.
Just deal with it.
But I think the tendency when you feel lonely is just kind of shut yourself into your trailer wherever you're living And so I would encourage you to seek others out, even if you don't feel like it. Because there's probably others that are feeling lonely too.
Oh, I can imagine. I know I've never been homesick going there. I'll probably be this time since it's a lot longer.
Yeah.
I won't admit to it, but I'm just kidding. Yeah, so it's nice to know because it's coming a lot quicker than expected. But I would love to give the viewers an opportunity to be a part of Foundation for His Ministries. I know there's plenty of ways and options for people to get involved, and I'd love for you to share that because I think it's a vital opportunity for people to be a part of.
Well, we always need prayer. That's kind of the obvious one. But really, the things that we're doing, I think especially with Sinaloa and what we're dreaming and trying to do there, it's the kind of dream that if God doesn't show up, it's not going to happen. So we just need a whole team of people all over the country praying for our ministry and the things that we're trying to do. We always need visitors. We really... Anyone out there that hears this that has construction experience or knows how to do maintenance, electricians, plumbers, we always need those people. But even if you think, well, I don't really have anything like that, like a specific skill that I can offer, we can use you. If you come with a willing heart, you can work hard for a week, or if you apply to go for longer. And then the other obvious thing is that we always need donations. Money is one of the unfortunate pieces of the world that we need to continue running, so we're always praying about our finances and seeking God in that. And like I had mentioned earlier, you can sponsor a child, so you get assigned a specific child, and it's $30 a month, and that money goes directly towards care for children. And then you can write that kid, send them birthday gifts, and just be in relationship with them.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to be able to do that with a girl in Mexico, and it's just so awesome. I'm actually going to be there for her birthday this year, which is like...
Oh, that's great.
It's really, really cool. I'm really excited about that. But yeah, it's really, really awesome to be a part of this organization. Whatever way that you can get involved, I highly, highly recommend it, whether that is emailing her or getting your whole church involved and going down there. I mean, it will be a life-changing experience. You can go ahead and give her a call at 949-492-2200 or email her. Which one's better for you? Either or?
Either one.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that would be really great. Is there any experience that comes to mind? I know I definitely have a few of your Mexico experiences that really stand out.
I think my very first trip, I had a life-changing experience that I'll never forget, and it's probably why I'm here today. And that we went out to a migrant camp, so they have field workers that are growing strawberries, tomatoes, raspberries, and they live in very poor conditions. So the visitors and staff from the mission go out to just love on the people living there and tell them about Jesus. And so that night we were showing a movie, and so this little girl, probably 3 years old, came and sat on my lap and fell asleep during the movie. And so then afterwards, everyone else holding kids, they kind of dispersed, and I was still holding this little girl, and they were packing up the generators because there's no electricity in the camp, and it was dark, and I thought, how is this going to work out? And so they started looking for this mom, and probably half an hour later, the outreach workers brought her and translated for me, and she was crying, and she said, I was hoping you would take her because I don't have electricity in my home, I don't have water, I'm not going to be able to send her to school. You could give her a better life. So I was crying, and I just thought, this is what I want to give my life towards, is loving the Mexican people and finding ways for them to live whole lives in Jesus.
I've had experiences like that too. I'm looking back on it, and you don't go in there with the mindset like I have more or anything like that. Like there's not an ounce of that within like me and within you. Like when you go there, it's just like you just want to love on them. I mean,
right.
that's all. And I've experienced. I don't speak that much Spanish, but love is truly the strongest form of communication. And that's like something to hold on to even here within the United States.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
there's other people who speak different languages and things like that. And it's important. You know, we all have purposes and we all have stories, and God wants to use each and every one of us, no matter the race, no matter the age, no matter where you are in the world. And what does your job entail? I've always like wondered, like as the executive director, like what are some of your daily tasks that you go through?
A lot of email. I sometimes joke that I send email for a living. No, but I coordinate with the administrators of each mission to make sure they have what they need, and make sure we're all going in the same direction, kind of problem solve for them. And then we have staff in San Clemente, California. We have 7 people on staff, so I oversee them. They coordinate visitors going down and all of our social media and the newsletter. We have a monthly newsletter that you can sign up to get.
It's really, I like the prayer letter though, because you kind of get to see like everything that's happening, and it's weekly, right?
Weekly email.
Yeah, it's nice.
So I just coordinate all that. I get to work with amazing people and just make sure everyone has what they need to do their jobs.
Well, it sounds really important. No, it really does. And what about Charlotte's book? I would love for people to read it, because, I mean, that's the heart and soul and the foundation of everything that God has done throughout this organization.
It's a really good read, too. I'm not just saying that. It's
called
called Charlotte's Children, and you can order it on our website, which is FFHM.org.
Awesome. And there's lots of other things you can find on there, like applications to serve.
Yes.
I went through the process. Also donating, and you can see all the different ministries. I mean, there's so many. It's tremendous. You should list off a few, because, I mean, it's quite remarkable how many different ministries are within this one organization.
Well, in Baja alone, we have a church, a Bible Institute. I'm kind of thinking through the layout. We have a Disabled Children's Learning Center, which Mexico doesn't have a special education program, so they bring in special needs kids every day to clean them up, make sure they have what they need physically, and teach them in school.
In a daycare facility.
There's a daycare right next door to that.
I love it.
So it's 30 2- and 3-year-olds that otherwise would be home alone while their moms work in the field. So they go and pick them up and do preschool program with them. And we have a school for our kids in the home. We have about 86 kids right now in the children's home. So that's ages like 3 months, I think, is the youngest, to 18 years old.
Yeah. We only have a minute left, but I would love for you just a few words of wisdom for the viewers, whatever God puts on your heart.
I think the biggest thing is that God is not only working in Mexico. He is doing a work here in California as well, and He wants to do a work all over the world. And so when we visit Mexico, our spiritual antenna's up. We're kind of watching for how God is working. So I think my challenge in my daily life in California is to watch for how God is working here, because He wants to do a work here as well.
That's an amazing reminder for all of us to stick to. And I just want to thank you so much for driving out here and being a part of my Path to Purpose.
Thank you for having me.
So much to me. And thank you guys for being a part of my Path to Purpose and watching the show. I'm leaving for 3 months for Mexico, so
Yay.
I'll see you then. But keep up with our Facebook page and YouTube at shastasjourney.com. See you guys later. Bye-bye.